Chapter 7. Stories grow taller in the fresh air. A liar, the old man declared one day when I had stretched the truth to touch on some matter involving non-attendance at school, is a person I cannot abide. He is like a suck-egg dog. You can't trust him out of your sight. Yes, sir, I said, having been caught out handily. However, the old man said, gnawing at his mustache, there are certain exceptions to the rule. Yes, sir, I said, looking hopeful. Now, I wouldn't give a nickel for a truthful hunter or fisherman, the old man continued. A hunter who ain't a liar or a fisherman who won't toy with the truth is generally the kind of man who will do you one in the eye for a cattle trade, foreclose a mortgage on a widder, and sneak stamps out of the petty cash box. He'll steal a horse and possibly kick his dogs. He will also have a small, tight, mean mouth and carry his money in a snap purse. He fired up the pipe and shot one at me fast. How much did that big puppy drum you caught the other day weigh? 35 pounds, I said. The old man positively glowed with triumph. He cackled. I weighed it behind your back, he said. It weighed 32 pounds. You see, you're an automatic sporting liar, which I think is commendable. If it had been me, I'd have said 40 pounds, but you're young yet, and you don't know the difference between a cheese-paring fib and a good, strong, hairy-chested falsehood. If you got to tell one, tell a good one. I ever tell you about Elwood and Corbett and the doe deer? Elwood and Corbett were two brothers who lived near the green swamp, and like many another, including my friends Tom and Pete, were known to make and sell a little white lightning, and thought that game laws were an invasion of civil liberties in Onslow County. They had a smokehouse that was full of meat the year round, and very little of it had ever seen an abater. There was a limit of 2 deer a year, and once I asked Elwood how many deer he'd shot so far, this being before Christmas, he'd scratched his head and replied, well, I bought a box of shells in October, that's 25, and I got 2 left. That means I must have shot 23 deer. No, damn it, I forgot. I had to shoot 1 deer twice. The old man went on. I was hunting with the boys one day close to Waccamaw, and I was waiting on a deer stand when I heard a gun go off. There wasn't any mistaking it. It was Elwood's. He was the only man around that had a single-shot .32 rifle. When I heard the crack, I moseyed over about half a mile to help him skin and gut the deer. As I come close, I heard voices, and there's this game warden talking to Elwood. You shot this here doe deer, Elwood, the warden said. What doe deer? Elwood replies. This here doe deer. Here. The one you just drug into the bushes and was fixing to cover up with brush when I come by. I never shot no doe deer. You must have shot her, the warden says. Her neck's broke with a bullet, and that's a .32 shell lying over there by that stand. The deer's here, and the cartridge is there, and you're here, and you're the only feller around with a .32 rifle that always breaks deer's necks a running. I say you shot this here doe deer, Elwood. Elwood put another bullet in his rifle and hauled back the hammer. It made a nasty click. Warden, he said, anybody that says I shot a doe deer is a suck-egg dog, and I'd shoot ary suck-egg dog I ever seen in the woods. The warden looked at Elwood, and then he looked at the gun, and then he looked at the dead doe. He shuffled his feet and cleared his throat. I reckon you didn't shoot that there doe after all, he said. But it's a nice day, ain't it? You know those cold gray eyes of Elwood's? He looked the warden straight in the face a long time before he answered. Finally he spoke. Hit might be, he said. Good day, warden. Good day, Elwood, the warden said, and disappeared into the trees. Elwood got out his knife and started to get the deer. Now that, the old man said to me, is what I would call a very special lie, and one I don't approve of, because Elwood was wrong in the first place, and he was backing up his lie with force. That's what starts all these wars you read about. A feller'll tell a lie and get caught in it, and when he's got to shoot his way out of it, unless the other fellow falls for the bluff. There's little moral in that, too. There ain't any use bluffing unless you're prepared to shoot your way out of it, and I am convinced that Elwood would have shot that warden. Those were hot-tempered boys down that way. The old man got out his plug of tobacco and whittled a little clump of shavings into his hand. He stuffed them carefully into his pipe after knocking on the dottle and fired up the infernal machine. There's a lot to be said for some kinds of truth stretching, he remarked vaguely. A lot of mischief making goes on from telling the pert truth that could be avoided either by keeping your mouth shut, giving an evasive answer, or telling a teensy little white one. This here kind of lying is called diplomacy and is practiced the world round by diplomats and statesmen. A home is a little simpler, I mean. If your ma asked me if you cut school the other day, which you did, I would merely say, I don't know, I haven't seen too much of him lately. This would save you some trouble at home. But if I go running to your ma blabbering that you've been cutting school without ever asking me whether I had a without ever even asking me, then I am a meddlesome old man. But still, I am technically telling the truth and should be had up for being noble beyond the call of duty. You see the difference? As far as I'm concerned, I see it, I said. It's the difference between a week's lost allowance and a swat on the tail. It wouldn't be a lick amiss, the old man said. I know where you got that phrase, I said, sort of cocky. You got it out of Tom Sawyer when Aunt Polly whipped Tom when he wasn't really guilty. The old man looked at me in amazement. He shook his head. I cannot really believe that education is beginning to sink in but there are signs. Where was I? Different kinds of storytelling, I said. Well, now, the old man said, we come up to the sporting liar. He ain't really a liar. He's kind of an artist, like a painter. The difference between a photographer and a painter is that the photographer uses a machine that captures the subject exactly as it is. If the subject has got a wart on the nose, the camera records that wart, but a painter only makes an impression, his impression of what the subject seems like to him. If a man is painting a woman he loves, or if he's painting for money and the woman has a wart on her nose, or too many chins, there's no law which forces the painter to leave the wart or dutifully record the chins. He can exercise a little artistic license because paint's cheap as talk. The old man yawned and scratched himself. There are a great many fine things about hunting and fishing, he went on. You can look at a deer-foot knife handle and remember what time the sun rose, how late the dew lasted, what the camp was like, how the food tasted, how the dogs sounded, when the sun set, when the moon rose, how the owls hooted, all the sounds and sights and tastes and feels. There is that moment of triumph when you boat the trout or haul in the bass or shoot the deer or score a snappy double on the birds. But it is really anticlimax to the other stuff. The adventure is ended when the bird in the coat, the fish in the creel, the deer gutted and hung in the tree. It is sad, a little bit, because all the anticipation is gone, the fact accomplished, the sport over. And that's where lying comes in. It is a sin to call it lying. It isn't, really. It's taking a piece of nice, honest cloth and embroidering a pretty design on it. You can't do the embroidery without you got the cloth first. You sit around and you remember and you talk in front of the fire, and gradually you swindle yourself into believing that the deer had 18 points instead of 12. You shot 30 ducks instead of 15. You only used half as many cartridges as you actually used, and all the fish were world records. This is a highly healthy thing. When you're a man grown too old for fairy stories, for folk tales, but any man is only a little boy with creaky joints and bald spot, a mortgage and dyspepsia. He still needs to be amused, and this excessive use of the imagination, which we call fish stories, is just an old little boy telling himself fanciful adventures to keep the hobgoblins away. Without these little embroideries on life is mostly a matter of getting up in the morning, staggering through the day, going to bed at night, and thinking about the bills you haven't got the money to pay. When you get older, he said gently, I think you'll understand what I mean. Where does it start and where does it stop? I asked him. Where does the embroidery leave off? A man can overdo it, the old man replied. I know a lot of bums who have managed to talk themselves into the idea that nothing's their fault, that they ain't lazy, and that the world owes them a living. I know drunks that blame what's wrong with them on the state of the cosmos, or the boss is down on them, or their wives don't like them, when all the time they're drunks because they drink too much liquor. That is when you are really off with the birds. But a little self-delusion is good for the digestion, aids sleep, and improves conversation. It doesn't hurt a man to tell himself that things would have been different if the dog had a cold nose that day, or if the wind was right instead of wrong, or that if he'd let it another foot he would have had it in a bag. And blimey, you'd believe it and are happy with it, and it isn't a lie or a self-delusion anymore. It's a fact because you made it so by constant practice. Of course, I see now that the old man was right, as he was mostly right. I have been to a war and I have written a great many words. I have hunted and fished and traveled the world, and I find that without any intent at real falsehood, I have managed to embroider. So few true stories are letter perfect. All need a little lace work, a little added padding here, a little decoration there. Recently in Africa, I shot a leopard, and that was quite a feat, if I do say so myself, as it had eluded the best 6 white hunters I know for a matter of more than 2 years. It steadfastly refused to appear in daylight. More by luck than design, I got it to come to the tree in shooting light, nailed it precisely through the shoulders, and celebrated for a week. In my mind, that leopard is already becoming a legend. I did things to attract it that I really didn't do, but almost did, if I'd thought of the things at the time. The leopard has already grown about a foot in length and is easily another 30 pounds heavier. We stalked it 100 yards at most, but the distance has moved up to half a mile, and the other difficulties from that pig as bait to bees in the tree have grown apace. A friend of mine shot another leopard, a big female, under most unusual circumstances on a recent safari. He shot it charging and growling and moving as only a hurried leopard can travel. Since that day I have heard the story about 50 times. The exaggeration is mine, actually only about 22 times. But the tale has changed as many times as he's told it. He is now referring to she as he, and the beast has doubled in size, ferocity, and noise. We went together to the taxidermist one day in Nairobi and inspected a male leopard whose hide was so big as that of a medium-sized tiger. I'd say mine was a little bigger, wouldn't you? The friend said, believing it. I think yours was a lot bigger, I said, compounding the felony and believing it. Back at the old man, I once declared my intention to hunt in Africa when I was a big boy, if the gods would so allow. I hope to live to see it, the old man said, but most likely I won't. But I will make you a bet right now. By the time you get through talking about it and thinking about it, all the lions will be as big as elephants, all the elephants as big as houses. And when you go to sleep at night, you will count the ammunition and find you never missed a shot. The strange thing is that the old man was right. There was one day when I shot a buffalo with a .318 and killed him and another standing behind him, or was that a .300 Magnum, and did it happen to Harry Shelby?